Okay, so I'm going to talk about the title Simo. I have thought about making a video about martial arts titles in general because, there's a few things to say about them. And if you've followed what I say much of what I say on social media, you probably know I don't really set a huge amount of store by martial arts titles. But there's something in particular about the title Simo that I feel merits a particular individual discussion. Now the thing about Simo is that it just means teacher's wife. That's it. All you have to do to have that title is marry a Sifu. I'm not entirely sure where it came from, like when it started being used. I'm not sure it was ever even used in China, to be honest with you. I mean, a lot of these titles that are used in Chinese martial arts, I can't see that it's likely that Chang Hyung, for example, was ever called Sifu. He might have been referred to as, my Sifu, as in my teacher, or something, but it was I don't think it would ever have been considered like a title as such. He would never have been called Grand Master in his lifetime. I think titles in general in martial arts are the kind of thing that were introduced relatively recently to give an air of authenticity, I think, to the traditional martial arts, rather like the traditional Chinese martial arts uniform, which equally, Chang Hyun would never have worn because he was poor. Those are upper class clothes. But anyway, and a lot of the that some of the past masters have been sort of posthumously given titles, like Lao Bun is called Great Grandmaster within the PBIF. I don't think he was ever called Grandmaster in his lifetime. He's referred to as Professor by the Hung Sing Kwun, like his descendant students, and but I was told he was never actually called that in his lifetime either. Kind of amuses me that they gave Lao Bun a title that's very much a Western title, and they also don't tend to wear the traditional Chinese martial arts uniform. I suspect they feel comfortable enough in the tradition of their style to not need those trappings. But anyway, the titles generally are they're not something that date back to the 1800s or the 1700s or anything like that within martial arts. They're all kind of relatively recent. I don't know exactly when Simo was introduced as a title, or when it was first used as a martial arts title. I watched a video by Ram Studio a little while back where he was talking about the title Sifu, and he said that in China, where, because he lives there, it's just generally used as a sort of respectful way of addressing people, like you might refer to your taxi driver as Sifu, something like that. He finds it quite odd that in Western martial arts schools the title Sifu is kind of a reverential title. So I don't even know if he's heard of the idea of Simo being a title or what he would think of it. I doubt very much that it's used commonly in China. In any context, really. I don't know, of course, but I've not really looked. And it doesn't seem to be used in Choi Li Fut much outside the PBIF. I've not noticed it being used really outside the PBIF. I could be wrong about that, but I've just not seen it in other branches, in other lineages. I don't, but I have seen it used elsewhere. I follow Wing Chun Sifu, who's a woman, Now she uses Sifu in her Twitter handle and I guess in her social media handles generally, but she does occasionally refer to herself as a Simo, but she says Simo Sifu, um, because she is married to a Sifu, but I think it's not something she makes a big deal of. She definitely kind of goes more with the Sifu thing. I've seen Simo used elsewhere, but I'm not entirely sure. I don't know when it started or who started it or anything like that. I'm going to say, right, I'm not necessarily against titles for women, particularly. CJ, for example, or CEO, or I don't know how it's pronounced, the one that means older sister. Now that's the female equivalent of Him, older brother, or big brother, or whatever. Now, I don't have a problem with that particularly because it is the female equivalent of big brother, and big sister or older sister, that seems like a reasonable thing within martial arts context. I'm the oldest of four. I know what it means to be a big sister, and my sisters and my brother, they know what it means to have a big sister. So if you tell them that you can have a title in the martial arts context of a big sister, they would think that was quite a reasonable thing to do, and they would understand what that meant. I mean, it's not necessarily the case that everyone who is given that title is necessarily very much like a big sister, but that's another thing entirely. You can understand what it's supposed to mean and the importance it's supposed to have, and it seems like a reasonable thing that you might have a big sister to help you along or watch over you or whatever. That's fine. Problem is, right, Simo, it's not equivalent. It's not a female equivalent of Sifu. A Simo does not ever have to even step into a martial arts school. All she has to do is catch the eye of a Sifu. That's it. All she has to do is marry a guy who has the Sifu title. That's all she has to do. She doesn't have to learn the way that a CJ does. And a woman can train under a Sifu in a martial arts school, get really good, get the title CJ, maybe get up to Black Sash, maybe get well above Black Sash. But if that Sifu is married to another woman and she has that title, Simo, she could be seen as more important as a woman who has trained under that Sifu. Even though that woman who's trained under that Sifu is way better at martial arts than the woman that Sifu is married to. Doesn't seem right to me. Now Jo Hardy, she had the Simo title. She didn't actually marry Neil until 2004, but he didn't get that title anyway, the Sifu title, until 2003. I don't know how much, whether she was using the Simo title before that. I don't really care, to be honest. But the thing is that, she had that title and she used it. She was Simo Wilcott on the Hung Sing website. And she was very clearly a part of the school. I don't know exactly how much involved she was because I was never there, but I know she did teach lessons and stuff, and a lot of the Neil students had a lot of great reverence for her and stuff. And she kind of did get to Sifu level, not at the time that she claimed she did, but she did eventually get to Sifu level. She was well trained, she was skilled. She actually only got to Sifu level 2 days before another woman who did train under Neil Wilcott. But, she was always, while she was a part of that school, the most highly skilled woman in the school. She was probably the most important teacher. But that was not purely by virtue of being married to Neil. I mean, I think probably a lot of it was about that. Even if you don't have a title, I think, you know, she would have probably got special preferences in various ways, you know, and she certainly would have had much more of a chance to train well, much more likely to be, you know, have Neil encourage her and stuff like that. So there are ways in which, you know, simply being married to a Sifu could actually give you advantages even without having any title bestowed on you as a result of that. But that's kind of not what I'm getting at here. Because the reality is that a Simo doesn't ever need to set foot into a martial arts school. That's the reality of it. Now, you don't. When I do see the Simo title used, it generally is that way. It generally is the case that a Simo would be, you know, go to lessons or be trained in some way, not necessarily to a high level, but would be trained. Might even be part of the school, might even be a teacher, but not necessarily always. Anyway, but it's a funny thing, you know, that woman who reached Sifu level 2 days after, it was to do with when the testing dates were, after Joe Hardy did. She's arguably a better martial artist than Joe Hardy. I mean, she got to Sifu level in less time. I mean, Joe Hardy started lessons several years before she did. And yet I know that woman who got to Sifu level 2 days after Joe Hardy thinks that Joe Hardy is better than her. She thinks Joe Hardy is a better martial artist than her, I think. But even if she doesn't think that, she thinks that Joe Hardy is better than her. And she thinks that purely on the basis of the fact that she was married to Neil Wilcott when she was training under him. And that's really sad. Now, I don't have I don't like either of them. I have my issues with both of them, but I feel that's kind of sad and wrong, really. And, you know, that might still happen even if Joe Hardy had never been Simo Wilcott. It might still have happened anyway. But I'm pretty sure. But the whole thing about titles is that they give an impression. You know, you keep calling someone, you keep using titles, it gives an impression, it reinforces how you think about people. And this is my problem with it. When you give a woman a title in martial arts purely because of who she's married to, what you are saying is that the most important thing a woman can do in martial arts is marry an important man in martial arts. That's what you're saying there. You're not. It's not about how well she's trained. It's not about her skill level. You know, Ronda Rousey, how many fights did she win? I lost count personally. She was never referred to as a Simo. She never married a Sifu, as far as I'm aware. But would she have as much respect in some PBIF school as a woman who happens to be married to a Sifu? I actually think she wouldn't, but I don't think that's right. You know, because Ronda Rousey, she achieved a lot. And it makes it look like it's harmful for women. It makes it look like it doesn't matter how much a woman trains. It doesn't matter how skilled she is. She's only really as important, that important, if she's married to a Sifu. And it just reinforces the whole ridiculous patriarchy in martial arts. It's harmful for women. It's very harmful for women to be seen as only important if they marry a man with a title. And I really feel like any woman who uses that title is really kind of inhibiting other women, they're making themselves out to be more important than women who've trained more than them, who've trained harder than them, who've trained better than them. And that's just really wrong. And it gives an impression outside the martial arts of it really not mattering how much a woman trains, how skilled a woman is. You're just making it worse for other women if you use that title. And that's how it is.